to our Tuesday, February the 14th, Valentine's edition of our agenda session. Thank you for allowing us the opportunity to have this at 2:30 this afternoon. I will take a motion on the minutes.
So moved.
Have a motion on the minutes, have a second to the motion. They will stand without objection. Ordinances on final reading tonight, Madam Clerk. We have planning item A. And I will ask Councilwoman Knoll, are we good to go?
We are
All
good
right,
to
thank
go.
you for that. I know that's had several deferrals, so appreciate
Yes.
your diligence in following through with that. We have ordinances on first reading. Madam Clerk, I'm going to go ahead and have you read under Council Office item A, please.
An ordinance amending Chattanooga City Code Part 2, Chapter 11 to add new definitions for absentee and homestay rentals, create an appeals process by an administrative hearing officer for absentee applicant disputes, and by the short-term vacation rental board for homestay applicants, creating the short-term vacation rental board and establishing density and distance restrictions for short-term rental units within the short-term vacation rental district in new sections 11-510 through 11-526.
Okay, council, if you have any comments, questions, opinions, additions, now would be the time. I'll watch the board.
Additions.
Councilwoman Knoll, you have the floor, ma'am.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. I still have some questions, some unanswered questions. Make sure I'm correct. We are going to, this is on here to be voted on for tonight?
Yes, ma'am. That is on the agenda tonight for a vote.
Okay, so I still have a lot of questions and concerns that I need answered. So I'm not ready for this here. I'm just not. I just got some information I needed that I had asked for, and I got it today. So I still need more time.
Understood. Anything else you'd like to add?
That's it.
Okay.
Other than, let me explain why I'm asking for more time, because the Buckeye are in District 8, so this affects District 8 a lot. So I would like to make sure we can do the best that we can do concerning these short-term vacation rentals for District 8 in the city as a whole.
Okay. And this is an opportunity for us to discuss this. So I will move to Councilman Hester, followed by Councilman Henderson.
I just want to publicly thank Councilwoman Hill and Councilman Henderson and all the work you guys put into our preparation and all that. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilman Henderson, then followed by Dr. Burrs.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I am curious, Councilwoman Knoll, you said you had questions that hadn't been answered. I didn't know if it had to do with the ordinance itself, or did it have to do more with where we are in regards to enforcement? I didn't know what some of your questions are.
Yeah.
One second, we're going to try this new button. We are now in open discussion. I think this is easier for us to than watching the board. So
A new button.
you know me.
It's in reference to the ordinance itself. I'm still not feeling like the constituency has a voice in here. I'm still not feeling like District 8 is the buffer. The buffer is another concern for me. And also the fact that District 8 has a lot of them that's illegal and that is legal, and the footage is not enough for number one, and the fact that the constituents are not having a say here. I just don't see where they have any say in this here.
So can I respond to that?
It's an open discussion, sir.
We did allow for constituents to file objections that would trigger a hearing, which is what we have currently, which, well, I guess just in my opinion, that does allow for the constituents to have a voice. Now, it's not limited to the number of people that obviously, that can come to a hearing. So, the whole community can show up and have their voice heard at that hearing in front of the short-term vacation rental board. So I guess, at least from my standpoint, and it was very important that be added to this piece of legislation so that constituents would have an opportunity to raise objection. Now, all we can do is sort of guarantee them a hearing that they would be heard, but there obviously would be no guarantee on the outcome. So I feel like the community does have a voice in this, at least in the single-family dwellings, not so much in the multifamily dwellings, but in the single-family dwellings where we've heard most of the complaints come from, they do have an opportunity to have their voice heard. As far as the buffer, I guess maybe we could agree to disagree on that. I mean, we looked at a 300-foot buffer. We also looked at a 500-foot buffer. I think the 500-foot buffer seems to be consistent with what most cities that implement this type of buffer zone go with. So, we may disagree there with as far as the distance, in an instance where you don't agree with it, I mean, then obviously it's you can voice your opposition to the legislation by voting no. But, I mean, Mr. Chair, I would respectfully ask that this legislation at least be enabled to be presented, be placed on the floor for an up or down vote.
And it's on our agenda this evening for that, sir.
May I say something else, Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
With all due respect, Councilman Henderson, 500-foot buffer is of the norm for some places, but you also got to realize other places share the responsibility of short-term vacation, not where there's 1, 2, 3 districts that's carrying the load of it. We are stuck with an overlay that we have all of them. And then it was brought up a couple of weeks ago that short-term vacation rentals are businesses. And businesses should not even be in the middle of a neighborhood. We have not even discussed the commercial corridors where that short-term vacation rentals could be placed. And there are some places that they have 1,000-foot buffer. So if 500 feet buffer for District 8 would allow almost 40 more short-term vacation rentals into District 8, which is, that's so unfair, so unfair. We have to take on 40 more than what we already have because of a 500-foot buffer. Once again, we are left with dealing with what nobody else wants. We are stuck with it because of the way this is written and the way it's set up. So it's an issue for me, and you're right, I'm only one vote. And we can vote it whichever way you want to, but just for the record, it is not a good thing for District 8. It is not. I don't even think it's a good thing for the city as a whole. Once again, overlay, who has the overlay? 9, 7, yeah, okay, so then we are left with those that don't have to deal with them at all, but even with the overlay, who is going to take the brunt of the short-term vacation rentals that is going to come in with a 500-foot buffer? Me? You may take some, 7 may take some, but they're going to fall here. This is something that we have to deal with. But if they are businesses, which they are, the commercial corridors should be explored and looked into. If I'll use historic Orchard Knob because that's where I live. If a short-term vacation rental wanted to come in on 3rd Street, Macaulay, or Host Claw, fine, no problem. But to continue to let them pile up in the middle of neighborhoods, businesses is what they are, then that's not a good thing. I'm just not willing, I mean, I might have to take it if that's the way it goes, but that's not something that I think is the right thing to do. The scales of justice here is not balanced in any shape, form, or fashion. We dragging the ground here with it.
Hang on one second, Councilwoman Hill, if you would, please. Dr. Burrs, you did have your hand up before we went into open discussion. I want to give you an
Yeah.
opportunity, please.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So I've been doing a lot of thinking about this, and I want to come at it from a different angle. I think it's not in my district right now. I get that. This is something bigger than districts. I think we have to come up with a plan, and this is not it. Come up with a plan that when it goes citywide, should it go citywide, it's acceptable all over the place. And we're looking at it as, we're not looking at, I think I said it last week, these are businesses. They should be taxed as businesses. They are businesses, and they should be only in the commercial corridors.
That's right.
That's number one. Number two, and I think my district could go along with that. Number two, it's taking away our housing stock, and we desperately need our housing stock. I've been in meetings and I just got a new version, and Jenny's done a wonderful job of working on all of this. I just got a new version.
It's the same version.
Is it the exact same? Oh, okay, well, I thought I got it again. Anyway, I have to ask a legal question, Phil. As it's written now, since we hear about getting all these lawsuits, as it's written now, does it pass legal muster?
I believe it does here, at least it's defining areas of the city that short-term vacation rentals can be had within. It does not allow them throughout the entire city. It actually does have, I guess, density requirements here within the code that I believe will work in that regard. And it protects those folks that had already been operating before the effective date of the ordinance. And that was one of the things that we were trying to make sure we were not changing.
And how does it compare with what the administration's, did it not pass legal muster? There was, way back, there was an original thing that came forward.
I think
It was different from CHIPS. I don't remember. There've been a number of them.
There have been a number of changes here as you've gone along. We've made a number of changes trying to make it more, I guess, acceptable, but also providing for the levels of whether there could be action taken by the administrative hearing officer on absentee rental units on here, whether there would be some discussion in the neighborhoods here by the board that would be established here as well. But I believe we have put in requirements that would allow it to be enforced and to be up to $500 a day penalties as well.
At this point, Mr. Chair, because of the taxation issue, which is another issue, I'm looking at this as a way that when, should it go forward, it would be acceptable to the people in my district. Right now, we don't have that concern. I think it probably will go citywide, and at this point, I'm not ready to go forward and vote yes with it. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Hill?
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
So the questions about, or the concept of approaching this from a different way, completely valid. The administration, just to give you all a quick reminder, since Councilwoman Burrs is not sure of how it all came together, the administration followed the City Council ad hoc committee for almost 6 months and did a great deal of heavy lifting and brought an ordinance, which you all will remember largely appeared in green on the document that I brought the council later. They brought an ordinance that said no short-term vacation rental in R1 and 25% in basically everything else. That was a draft that they brought to us to consider. That also included lifting the overlay. This body had a conversation or two, and it was clear to Councilman Henderson that that was not gaining traction within this council. And so Councilman Henderson asked Phil to bring an alternative approach, which was the density overlays, the buffers, a buffer and a percentage. I felt like we needed some of the clarity that the administration's version brought, and so we put them all together. That's the history of this, and we've been doing this for about 8 months now. If at any point, any member of this council was interested in pursuing the commercial thoroughfare approach, you've had 8 months to do that. And more pointedly, you've had about 6 weeks to do that. So I asked my colleagues, if in fact we want to approach this ordinance in that way, who here will raise their hand to lead that work? Because it will require a great deal of very careful thought to identify what in fact is a commercial corridor and what is not. To say that something, I think the most broad stroke version is anything that has that could have a hotel could be short-term vacation rental without a cap. Well, the reality is that almost all of the new property being zoned in District 7 is going to be commercial and able to be a hotel, right? UGC. We're going into mixed use land zoning. So we can't just broad stroke that. We have to be really thoughtful about it. So I don't know that I or Councilman Henderson are at a place where this is like we take this personally. I don't. This is work that I've been doing on behalf of the council and on behalf of the city. But who then will carry it the next step if we don't vote on this and we don't move forward? Because the reality is this moratorium is going to expire, and we owe the people of Chattanooga, all the stakeholders, whether they're our neighborhoods or whether they are our investors, we owe them some clarity. That's all.
I'll second that, Mr. Chair.
You can second whatever you want,
Chair, I
sir.
gotta say, I want to.
Madam Vice Chair.
Yeah, so-
We're in open discussion,
that's
so
right.
I'm trying to play this casual. And Councilman Kunrad, you chime in when you need to.
Oh, I'm sorry, Dee, did you, I mean,
Oh,
go
go.
ahead, I was after you.
Yeah.
Okay. Just first, thank you, Councilman Henderson and Councilwoman Hill for putting in so much work into this. I appreciate it. And I agree with you all in that we just need to move forward because at some point we're gonna have to, and we need to give the clarity to the administration to go ahead and hire the administrative hearing officer. We also do owe it to our constituents with the person, as the representative of the person with the most in her district. What I find with my constituents is it was just enforcement, really. It's about enforcement and that buffer and getting feedback from them. And most of you have received feedback from many people in my district. It's just enforcement was the really big issue, and I think we've tackled that a lot in here. And, you know, it may not be the perfect ordinance, but it is a start. It is somewhere where later on, you know, it's a clause in here that next year we'll come back and revisit it, but nothing stops us from revisiting it in 6 months, in 4 months, in 5 months. If somebody has an amendment to it that you want to add the commercial corridors, because I've heard that as well, what you guys said about the commercial corridors and things like that, but that requires work on somebody's end to do that. But I'm good with moving it forward and just, you know, it may not be perfect, but it is a start and a place that we can pick up from later and say, okay, now let's address the commercial corridors, let's look at it in a year, 6 months, whatever, whoever decides to pick that up, like you're saying, whoever decides to pull that forward, because this is a lot of work, a lot of research, a lot of talking, a lot of conversations. And so I think it's been done well. I did want to address, Councilwoman Burris mentioned being taxed as a business. Councilwoman Hill, I believe you addressed that a couple months ago.
Yeah, so
and I
that's
wanted to make
actually,
sure.
yeah, that's been addressed by the state in 2017. And so as a council member, I fully expect that the revenue projections in our next budget will include the adjustment of an absentee short-term vacation rental being assessed at a commercial tax rate.
Right, so
So that
that's
didn't need to be in the ordinance because it's already part of state law. We just haven't been
Doing
implementing it in the city of Chattanooga.
okay, that's what I thought. I was like, I know you addressed, you mentioned that, and I don't think we've covered it as much in this, in our conversations, but, so it is addressed. We just haven't been doing it on our end as a city, taxing them as a business as they, because they are businesses, and taxing them as a business as we should. Okay, but we will start that, or have started that.
I fully expect that we will see that in the next budget.
Okay. Other than that, I don't have anything else, but, you know, this be one thing off our checklist if we're able to move it forward.
Any other comments or
Thank you, Chair.
questions?
Oh,
Sorry, yes, I don't have the lights on, so thank you.
I do think, that Councilman Henderson and Councilwoman Hill both did a great job. But, and I hope this will be the last time that we have to revisit this, because for 6 years, we've been tackling this same issue year after year after year after year. And at some point, and we keep saying, oh, it's not a perfect document, but let's just work. Well, we said the same thing last year. We said the same thing the year before that, until somebody else comes up with another bright idea that gets elected on council and want to change it. But I do thank you all for the work that you've done on it. I appreciate your in-depthness. Councilwoman Hill, you remind me of our chairman, because he does the same exact thing, but I appreciate that. But I do want to acknowledge that Councilwoman Noel, like, her feelings are valid for her community. And when you think about our areas, they're saturated with it. Why? Because majority of the people, the renters and investors, are coming in our community because they're so distressed and impoverished. It's easy for them to just come by blocks at a time. And then if we do have, a owner, somebody that's just trying to supplement their income, we make the process extremely hard for those individuals to just make some income. And I've stated since the beginning, since I've been on council, like, I don't think that we should be telling homeowners what to do with their property. They are the owners. If you want to rent a room out, rent it. If it's in line with what the code say, hey, you should be able to do it. We shouldn't be coming in saying, oh, well, we don't want you to do this, or we don't want you to do that. Like, I think we should look at it in a different way as to who it is. Investors, if your age, you just looking for a supplemental income, and if that happened already, great. Chip, you mentioned access, and we talk about this all the time. In our communities, a lot of digital equity is an issue. A lot of people don't have access to internet. A lot of people don't have transportation who you would think need to be at the meetings when we're having these ad hoc committee meetings in the middle of the day. A lot of our constituents are at work. They can't attend the meetings. A lot of seniors don't have the equipment to even get online if it was offered to be online. So that it sounds good to say, but it's a lot of people in the city of Chattanooga that they're not having the access to these meetings when we offer them during that time. The people who mainly probably was at the meeting are the ones who can get here. It ain't like it was a packed room where we had overflow that we had to go to a stadium and say, wow, this issue is that huge. It wasn't that way. It's a lot of people who didn't give their input to this. It's really sad that we have an ask, and this happens quite often. And it goes back to depending on who make the ask, that whether if it's granted or not. But she kindly asked, hey, can we just wait till I get my questions answered? Because some of the information that I requested, we got it at the last minute. Can we just wait? If that's, we could say, okay, well, we can put it out for a week, then we're gonna get her questions answered. Joda or somebody, can you answer her questions before the next meeting? So she can have the information she need to give her time to comb through whatever her ask is, and then let's move forward.
we want to be team players at certain times, and then at other times we don't. I think it's a fair ask. But if the council, but if Chip, hey, if we decide that we want to move forward and it's an up or down vote, I'm cool with that too. I just want to make sure that we as a council recognize and ask that council members just saying, hey, I just need just a little more. That doesn't take away the great work that Councilwoman Hill or Councilman Henderson done. It doesn't take away from that. It's just saying, if we're not in a hurry to get it done right now, let's just honor the ask. Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome, thank you.
May I?
Absolutely, open discussion.
I just want to clarify a couple things. We have had multiple stakeholder meetings, one of which was in the evening specifically for neighborhoods. It was at Bessie Smith Hall. It was extraordinarily well attended. I would not want a narrative out there that we did not welcome our communities into this conversation. I think if anything, our investors would say that the communities are in fact benefiting significantly from this. As
That's
for
fine.
the questions that Councilwoman Knoll has had, we started talking about those 2 weeks ago. We didn't get, do we have any commitment that a week from now, there will be a change? Or, help me understand what's gonna be different next week. Because I don't think Chip nor I are trying to be ungracious, but it's like, we've had this many weeks where we're trying to get feedback. If anything, y'all, I had checklists of consensus, right? So help me understand what's gonna be different next week. So we'll be ready, yes or no?
Listen, I sympathize and empathize with you.
Oh, no, I'm asking Councilwoman
way.
Knoll, just help me.
But that was me who said,
Yeah.
maybe give
Can
a
I-
week or so, but wait.
And let me chime in. That was the reason I was asking a while ago what questions you
Yeah.
had, so that maybe we could start working on those. If it was a question about legislation or if it's a question about illegal ones, I think that's kind of a different scenario. Really, what I'd like to do is focus on questions about the ordinance itself. And then the questions about the illegal ones, we can kind of take care of at some point between now and when the moratorium. But I think what she's getting at is what specific questions could we get a list of them maybe, so that we know how to give you an answer?
I can give you a list, but the gist of it is District 8 is still going to have to deal with a lot more of short-term vacation rental, which we do not want. The constituents have made it plain and clear. They have blew my email up. They have blew my phone up. They don't want any more. They are done with it. So, it's a democratic way. If you get a vote to vote it up, to vote on it today, then it is what it is. But my thing is, it has got to be another avenue that we can look at. Commercial corridors, I brought that up even before yesterday and last week. I brought that up probably a month or so ago. And then then you say, well, if you got time to do this and that, well, it takes more than that length of time to pull something together. And when you can't get the information you ask for in a timely manner in order to do it, once again, it's just the fact that District 8 seems to not matter. That just since you don't have to deal with it in yours, then, hey, y'all worry about it. Worry about whatever it is. This is the way it's coming. This is the way it's going to go. This is the way the cookie's crumbling. This way. It's always just this way. Never keeping in the mindset that, come on, they have been done unfairly for such a long time. Let's just try to do something right by them. Let's just do something that's correct.
Mr. Chair, can I on the floor at
Yes,
this
sir.
point?
It's we're still in
Okay,
open
yeah, open
discussion.
discussion, but I think we need to be, treat each other fairly.
Appreciate that.
So I want to address two things. One, so I guess I'll address Councilwoman Knowles since this was the latest, but, so, back when this legislation originally passed for short-term vacation rentals, there was a District 8 representative at that time that supported this being in District 8. Now, he might have had a different take on it, so it wasn't like, and we sat down at a table, and we started with the overlay, with the urban overlay. And we went around the table, and I said, each council person add to or take away from this overlay. Russell Gilbert had one street in the urban overlay, and he said, I want that street out in District 5. One street in the urban overlay, take it out. We took it out. The District 8 representative at that time, he, as far as I know, left it just as it was. Didn't add anything, didn't take anything away. I added some, because District 1, very little of District 1 was in the overlay, but I added to it. At that time, the District 2 representative added some to District 2. So there was representation. District 8 had representation at the table when the overlay was created. I will say that much. So it wasn't like anybody on this council said District 8 is going to have it and they're going to like it. That representative had an opportunity to take it out. They could have took all of District 8 out if they'd wanted to at the time. But now that it's in, Mr. Attorney, correct me if I'm wrong, we can't reduce the footprint once we've established it, and once we have these businesses established, we can't remove that, correct?
Well, we have a short-term vacation rental district, and it says that district has been established by the RPA and the city council as amended from time to time. So yes, you could amend it.
Well, are you saying we could take District 8 out of it without?
Where you could amend that district if you chose to do so. The problem that you've got are the legal non-conforming uses that have already certified in that area.
That's what I'm referring to.
I believe you could amend your district.
So I guess, Councilwoman, if you want to amend the overlay, and that can be brought up at any time, and we do that from time to time. We do amend it. We amend the overlay separate from the legislation. So if you would like to amend the overlay for your district, what I'm understanding from the attorney, you can do that. So that is an option for District 8. If you, as their representative now, want to take it out, take it out.
Exclude us.
Well, that's an amendment you'll have to bring.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And if this is going to go ahead on and go forward with it the way it's here now, then, I had it wrote here to do just that.
So let me make this suggestion. Between now and when the moratorium ends, bring an amendment to exclude District 8 from the overlay. And then your problem's solved. Okay? Now, Councilwoman Coudron, I want to be sensitive, and I heard what you said about access to a meeting, and I would like to help me understand how we could maybe accommodate individuals that don't have access to the internet, or maybe even access to transportation, to a meeting downtown. I mean, and I don't know if it's even a possibility, since the board will be meeting, the short-term vacation rental board, that, would it be possible, I'm throwing out this idea, if they took their show on the road, and if you had objections in a particular neighborhood, maybe you take it to a community center in that neighborhood. I certainly want to be sensitive to access. It's not fair to say people have a voice if they can't get there for their voice to be heard. And I agree with that statement. So I think it's maybe up to us to think of some creative ideas. Okay, let's figure out how we address that. And maybe it's through policy, maybe it's through, since this board is going to hear objections to a permit, we usually heard the hearings during a council meeting. They won't have to be tied to that. I'm thinking they might be able to take it to a community center to hear it in a certain location. So, if those are the things that we can do to accommodate and make sure that people actually have a voice and that voice is heard, I'm all for trying to come up with solutions, and I'm willing to talk with you about that and come up with ideas, because I do want to be sensitive to that.
Thank you, Chip. I really appreciate that, because after 6 o'clock, if I didn't have transportation, I wouldn't even be able to get to the meeting. But I appreciate you, Councilwoman Hill, for hosting the 6 o'clock meeting at the Bessie. But there's communities like Eastdale, like Highway 58 area, where we don't have access to transportation. Maybe we could, like you said, take the show on the road and go to those areas. So host a meeting at 6 o'clock in Avondale to talk about it. Maybe get with Miss Lisa, with Carter, to say, hey, is this an opportunity where we can bring the minibus around for those who want to attend the meeting at this time and work something out? And, but I'll be happy to talk further with you about it.
Okay. So I'll do my wrap up here. Maybe this will help. In 2017, when we started talking about this, we had the option. I'm glad you brought that up, Councilman Henderson. We had the option to opt in, and we had the option to opt out. At that time, District 8 chose to opt in. At that time, District 9, if my memory serves correctly, chose to opt out. And then not too long after, chose to opt in. Councilwoman, if I'm incorrect, please tell me, but I believe that's what my memory recalls, not too long after we started the conversation. We've always had the option. When this year I have gone and attended to 5 community meetings, and so I've been kind of doing my research and homework. Some of these HOAs, if you will, and neighborhood associations have up to 200 or 300 residents in them. And I asked the same question as I have done since campaigning in 2016. This is a repeat of what I have said before, and asked about the short-term vacation rental in their neighborhoods. Okay, still, to this day, no one has raised their hands in favor of them in neighborhoods. But this year I did something a little different. I added a rider to the question, and that question was, well, do you consider these a business? And would you object to them if they were operating under a commercial zone, such as C2, or on a commercial corridor? So that's interesting. This conversation is coming up to my left because it's the exact question. And oddly enough, not one person in these neighborhood associations objected to that idea. Matter of fact, most of what I heard was, well, that's where they belong. And I thought, okay, very interesting. The last one was just last Thursday at the Hamilton YMCA, and that's 178 homes that represented. And I've asked each HOA to pen me a letter with their opinion, so that it's not just me repeating this for David Floyd to repeat, but I'll actually be able to back it up with some documentation. But I've been doing this for years, and the opinion has not changed. I think these are a business. I think we should treat them as a business. And when we held our work session, which, by the way, was overflowing from the conference room, there were so many people in attendance, we moved it into here because of so many people that were able to attend. And it was both residents and industry leaders. I asked that question to the folks out there who were willing to participate, and they did. And I said, do you consider yourself this business, a business? And the answer, a lot of hands went up. We talked about the tax rate, and people said they understood that as well. So I think when we're looking at short-term vacation rental, we need to ask what it is and define it a little bit further than its core. providing a house for rent. I mean, it is a business. Overall, hands down, it is a business. And the same as one neighbor asked me, well, would you like for someone to sell widgets or whatever it was? He used a different term, I'll say widgets. Would you allow that in the middle of our neighborhood? Or would you allow a hotel to operate in the middle of our neighborhood? And I said, well, obviously we would not. He said, okay, there's your answer. And I said, okay, there it is. It's really as cut and dry. So, and some of the conversation, I want to make sure we stay on track. We were kind of tiptoeing into homestay, which we're not talking about right now. We are talking about absentee. So I think the conversation is, and it's very interesting to hear District 8 so many years down the road feel the effects of short-term vacation rentals. We allowed businesses to go into neighborhoods. That's what we did. And I don't think we should have expected anything different. I certainly saw something years ago, which is why, and then one person, it's a great question, let me take a side road. He asked me in the meeting on Thursday, what's keeping us from falling victim to short-term vacation rentals? And I said, well, number one, and I gave Councilman Henderson kudos on this because he was very active in making sure, and I was as well, making sure HOAs were protected. You don't operate a business. That's interesting. We don't operate a business if your Cubs and regs don't allow it. So I think that's very interesting to note. So that kind of ties back to short-term vacation rentals are businesses. But this person asked me what's keeping them from coming into our neighborhoods. And I quite frankly just said, well, it's a very fragile wall, and that wall is called Darren. Because 5 votes on the city council, and unless you have an HOA that has Cubs and regs, I said, then you're going to be inundated with them. And he said, well, interesting word you use, inundated. I said, well, you should use that word inundated because the research shows, and our own Times Free Press articles show, there are tens and tens and tens and tens and tens of millions of dollars of investment waiting to hit for short-term vacation rentals in this city. We were told one day that it was not an interest, and the next day the paper told us a completely different story. So I believe that there is a tremendous amount of investment that is wanting to come into this citywide. So when we have the conversation citywide, you would ask me, and Dr. Burrs, I'm going to agree with you. Yeah, I would say District 4 would probably welcome these open arms if they were in a commercial zone, under a commercial zoning, along a commercial corridor. And then that solves that. But interior, in our neighborhoods, the fabric of our neighborhoods are so unique in each part of our city. And I've heard it said out here once before, someone from the podium, well, what's good for one place is good for everybody. And I tend to disagree with that. I don't think that's necessarily true because every house is different. Every house has different values. And I think that's what makes us a unique society, is that we should always accept a multitude of different ideas and be able to form our own for what's good for us. So I think District 4 is definitely not interested in the R1. District 4 is not interested in having them come into neighborhoods and the traffic and everything that comes with it. It is a business by definition. I know I'm being a little long-winded, but I think we've made some really good conversation headway here. And I appreciate so much what Councilwoman Hill and Councilman Henderson have done. You have plowed through ground that is rocky and tough, and you've hit some rocks. And I think we're there, and we've had some really good conversations. But I'm also hearing some pain. I'm hearing pain of what we inflicted into neighborhoods, probably not knowing, probably very true pain. And I would hope that we would at least continue that conversation to maybe address that, because this is real. And this is going on around the country. If you think this is unique to Chattanooga, Tennessee, oh goodness. Look at Savannah, Georgia. Look at Chatham County, one of my test cases. Tybee Island, almost 50% of their real estate in their neighborhood's gone to short-term vacation rentals. Their entire what used to be Tybee Island's neighborhood is disintegrated. Thunderbolt in Chatham County as well had to go in. They've had this same painful conversation. And they just recently enacted their own density cap because they found, I think it was 38 or 48%, again, a high number of the housing was being taken. And like I said at the end of the meeting a couple of work sessions ago, once we lose this stock, ladies and gentlemen, it's gone. It is gone. It ain't coming back because it's too profitable. You operate, this is a business and it is profitable. The industry has told us it's profitable. I mean, we've asked these questions, if you've paid attention. I've asked these questions individually to people who come to the microphone. Why did you choose this? Because it's more profitable. I mean, they're telling us what we need to hear. So it is a business, and I just want us to be sensitive to each other and to listen. One of the things I pride myself in since I've been here in 2017, and I did that first conversation with Matt Busby, was how we listen to each other and how we really try to understand what's going on in each other's districts. And I've learned so much from being patient and listening to what you all have to say, because you are the voice of your people. And I know that I've been out there talking with my residents all year so far, adding that extra component because and here's the thing, I've asked them, do you think this will stay in the overlay? Do you think this will become citywide at some point? Nobody thinks that it will stay the way it is forever. And I think that's a very realistic thought. And so I'm posing to them now, what does it look like? But it still remains that inside of our neighborhoods, we would like businesses not to come in. And that's the way District 4 is positioned on this. So opening this up for conversation in a year, I'm just telling you, if I'm still here and on this earth, I'm going to be saying the same thing. Thanks, but no thanks. But if we want to talk about commercial, let's talk about it. We do have a moratorium in place. We do have the ability to craft that now and not have it come back up in a year and revisit this. But if not, then I think we can have that conversation. But that will be those are my 2 cents coming from my observations from the work that you all have done and listening to my constituents to this point. And I think through years of experience watching and listening to my colleagues talk about the impact this has on our neighborhoods. And I think it's just really important that we maintain listening to each other as a way to move forward. That's my diatribe, and I appreciate everyone listening. Any other questions or comments regarding item A? Yeah, I've opened up a lot, yeah. So do we want to go back to open discussion?
Yeah, let's just go back to open discussion. I don't think we're through discussing this.
That's fine, we're back in open discussion.
So in our neighborhoods, in commercial corridors, let's explore this, because somebody's going to have to pick up this mantle and figure it out. And I don't know if it's going to be Councilman Henderson. I don't know if it's going to be Councilwoman Hill that's going to figure it out. Because as you said, we've dug up a lot of rocks, and it might be somebody else's turn to pick up a shovel. In our neighborhoods, what our neighborhoods look like now and 10 years ago is not what our neighborhoods are going to look like 10 and 15 years from now, most likely. Meaning that the land that has been disinvested or never been built will be built in a way that is different than the way our current neighborhoods are laid out. I believe that to be true. We see far out in the county, we're getting smaller lot sizes, we're getting homes closer together. We're seeing in our urban centers, large-scale buildings going up, where a neighborhood effectively can be a building. We're looking at one, one came across the Planning Commission last month that, it's a full city block, y'all. It is a 5-story full city block. So if this council is gonna think about whether short-term vacation rental should be available, quote, in our neighborhoods, what does a neighborhood 15 years from now look like? Because we need to be thinking about those neighborhoods, not the neighborhoods we've already built. Because I've got entire sections of District 2 that were built in the 50s and 60s that are cul-de-sac neighborhoods that 20 years from now could be a very different place. Right? I mean, we're gonna need land and those houses are gonna change, owners, it's just gonna change. So I wonder, Karen, this is putting you on the spot, Karen Rennick, about zoning. A conversation has been had about if something is in a commercial zone, the potential of opening that up to short-term vacation rental. Another idea that has been brought is, quote, if you could have a hotel in a zone, you should be able to have a short-term rental in a zone. Some people say without any caps. Some people say 50%. So Karen, would you please share with us, and if this is too many things to ask all at once, then we can pause and come back. What zones currently can have, are commercial zones that can also have residential in them?
So are the portions of the city that have the, I guess the commercial zones that are most prevalent are the C2 commercial zone, convenience commercial zone, which is the older kind of the strip that's along like Brainerd Road or Hickson Pike, for example, that does allow residential. It is at the 19 dwelling units an acre, but it does allow residential. The urban general commercial zone, which we've had quite a bit of, it's it's a newer zone, but we do have quite a bit of rezoning, and there have been cases before council with conditioning that to just residential use only, depending on how that tool is used. We do have some lesser use zone, a C4 zone, a C5 zone. They're just not as prevalent as the two, as C2 and UGC. Let's see, anyone else has a different opinion. So I got a second opinion on that, yes.
Okay, so as our spade carrier thinks about those, I personally would want to know, what does it look like for UGC, for C2, for C4? And are we saying absolutely no to RTZ, for example? Are we saying, what about form-based code? In District 2 and District 1, we've got form-based code. I think you've got it in District 7 and 8. What forms there? Within form-based code, residential can be in any of those forms, yes?
I think most of them, I'm not sure about the industrial zones, I'd have to double check.
And then, Karen, hotels, where can a hotel be zoned?
We have hotels in the C2 zone. They're allowed in some of the form-based code zones. I believe they're allowed in the C4 zone because we had a height amendment for that for a while. They would not be allowed in the C5 zone. So the C2 zone, would again, the commercial strip, convenience commercial zone is C4, which is the zoning for some of the malls does allow C4. It does allow hotels,
Okay,
motels.
and does UGC allow for a hotel?
The UGC, I believe, would allow for a hotel and motel. Probably the hotel form, I'm not sure about kind of the distinction with a motel in that zone.
Okay, so again, whoever is our spade carrier, those are things that I'd want to understand as what does that look like? Because when Chris Anderson brought us the heat map of what it looked like to see where something could go, let me find my heat map that I have in my files. If you all can't, well, we have really amazing video, so you might be able to see everything that's yellow in the city would have been applicable under the original administration. It would have been available at 25% occupancy or 25% density for short-term vacation rental. And when I saw that, personally, I looked at District 2 and I said, wait a sec, like, I can't give away, this is District 2 in purple, I can't personally give away all that yellow in my little sea of purple, 25% of that to short-term vacation rental. Which is why when Councilman Henderson brought this density cap, I thought, now that's something that is clearer. And I knew that at the 500-foot buffer, we'd be looking at less than 5% of our single-family detached being available to short-term vacation rental.
And I can provide a table showing the zone, single-family, multifamily, hotel, motel, just run down for each of those.
I will say also, I do think it's compelling, the argument of if you could put a hotel there, why can't I have short-term vacation rental? But I don't see that that works without any guardrails on it.
Councilman Henderson,
Yeah.
if we could wrap this conversation up, if we do have an attorney-client that we have to cover.
Okay.
We need about 15 minutes.
Well, I mean, I think we need to get to some kind of resolution because this is on the agenda tonight. We have first asked for a deferral for a week to get questions answered, and I'm kind of still looking for what the questions are. But so, Mr. Chair, you brought up, and I, as we went through this whole process, I heard you say over and over again, District 4 doesn't want it, District 4 doesn't want it, and then I heard you say today, well, maybe in the commercial zones they want it. So I guess what I'm curious to know is maybe you and Councilwoman Burrs that said earlier, whenever the administration brought their proposal, you weren't quite ready for that yet, knowing that we were going to hit a lifting of a moratorium. It really concerned me that we really did not have anything in place. So I guess I'm asking, if we went back to the original proposal that was made, are you saying you would support that now before the moratorium runs out? Like, are you ready to support the original presentation that was made for commercial corridors so that we have something in place once the moratorium lifts?
I would be very interested in having that conversation, yes, because the way I have framed the question, and Councilman Smith, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I would appreciate your 2 cents as well. You don't need to, we're in open discussion, so. But yes, Councilman, the conversation as this has evolved over time has come into, in a commercial core, I've always been interested in that concept. But when I'm out there, and springtime is my HOA meetings, so I'm use like 2 a week for like 3 months, and it's great because I get to get in there and just talk and take all the arrows and have this conversation. But what's interesting is what I'm listening to folks, and they're saying to me, well, just keep it out of my neighborhood. We just don't want a hotel in our neighborhood, period.
That seems to be a little bit different.
If it's on gun barrel under a commercial zone.
So that seems to be a little bit different conversation now than what was had when the administration brought that original piece of legislation. We're not ready for it. And so when I heard we're not ready for it, I'm like, well, okay, the moratorium's gonna lift. We need something in place that creates a board, that creates an AHO. So I guess I'm a little.
It's coming, Councilman. I'm a practical person.
Yeah.
It is coming citywide. It is coming, and I understand that.
Yeah. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is how to go forward at this point. And, Councilwoman Hill's put so much work into this,
It's not the end of my world.
But I get, yeah, but
it is, because we still going on.
Councilwoman Knoll,
So,
this is District 8 in the yellow from the administration's version. That's your whole district would be available, except R1.
and now understand
Mike, can we move
understand the-
forward, please? Because we just going in a rabbit hole.
So here's what
It's
I'm-
the
Map I saw,
understand that the
Councilwoman Hill.
original legislation did allow owner-occupied homestay throughout the city, throughout every district, homestay would be allowed. So, I mean, personally,
not sure I'm ready for that conversation. but-
okay, so then I think we need to move forward with
Okay.
this present legislation.
Okay.
So that we're not muddying the water, we have something on the books, when this moratorium lifts, we know which direction we're headed. I'm done.
We need to get through the agenda, and then we do have attorney-client. Councilman Smith, I saw you keep reaching for your imaginary, like, we're in open discussion, so go ahead.
You've got me disabled, so
Your mic's on.
Everybody's
I'll just go this way. Live microphone. I like these. I wonder who printed them. Councilman, I don't know if it was David or John that quoted me at the very beginning saying that I would be open to discussion and even favorable of STVRs in commercial zones. But absolutely under no circumstances of any kind in residential areas. Period. So when the first legislation came up, it had it homestays in residential. I was not in favor of moving forward that way. And then I recommended doing them by zone, and that got shot down by the body, and now we're right back to talking about doing them by zone. So, at this point, it just seems like, muddying the waters is a small way to put it as to where we have gotten. But that's where I was then, that's where I am today.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Chairman, for the record, District 5 and the overlay, we oppose, to have the short-term rentals in the residential area. We might entertain the commercial, like you guys state. So, in the future.
Just one comment? Yeah, very quickly. That's exactly what I said last week, and that's what I've been saying is, you said it very well, Mr. Chair. I think that the idea of putting them in the commercial corridors might be saleable. In the neighborhoods, absolutely not. And the legislation that we have now, that's the reason I can't support it, is because it should be very simple legislation that says that. It makes it very clear that we're not invading our housing stock. And one way or the other, the next thing we have on the decision tree is the administrative hearing officer, which is not a doubt in my mind, it should go forward right now, regardless, because we need to go ahead and start showing that we can do what we promised to do. So that's why I can't support what we're doing now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to take us out of open discussion. I'm going to clear the queue. And we are going to move forward. I do need at least 15 minutes in the conference room for attorney-client. Madam Clerk, we're going to move quickly through ordinances on first reading. We've covered A, B. Anything to add on that, Councilwoman Burrs or Councilman Smith? I think that one is covered well. Under planning items, I do have a note that we may need a deferral on item C, case 0017. That can be addressed at 6 o'clock. I do believe we also had a request from the applicant on item A, case 0010 for withdrawal. We'll see what motion comes at 6 o'clock. And then under tonight's mayor's office, under tonight's resolutions, we have the CARTA, Air Pollution Control Bureau, appointments to consider, Parks and Outdoors. We do have a PUD discussion under item 0007. Councilman Hester, are you ready for that hearing tonight?
I'm ready for it. I did speak with Karen regarding a condition. We're going to add additional trees along the fence line.
Okay.
Where the parking lot's located.
Okay, we can, if you would have those ready, if that's something that can be added, if you have discussed that with the city attorney and RPA, either that or we'll need to make that motion from the floor. I'd like to see it cleaned up, maybe in an alternate version or added to that if possible before 6 o'clock. Let me know. If not, we'll move through from the floor motion. Under Public Works, a couple of items there in 7 and 8. We have 4 purchases, 2 committee reports, 0 RFPs and 0 emergency purchases. If I am moving fast, I will look up periodically at the light. Moving into next week, we have our planning items that we will, on our proposed agenda. Still like that word. And then we will move into council office. We have a resolution confirming a appointment for Mr. Noblet as the Chattanooga City Attorney, which looks like all 9 council members have signed on, including obviously the mayor, who agreed. So sorry, press, nothing for you to report there. And we also have a new rules of operation that were discussed in our meetings in strategic planning under legal and mayor's office. If you'll take a look at that, community advisory committee appointments. Okay. We do not have any committee reports this afternoon. And yeah, would you like to announce that now? Madam Vice Chair, please, if you don't mind, hit your light for me. Thank you for that.
So you all were here most of you all were here last week, or the week before last, when we honored Ms. Doris Bruce Kelly. And so we will have her sign unveiling next Wednesday at 12 o'clock at Tennessee Avenue and 46th Street in St. Elmo. If anybody would like to come, I want to thank Ben so much for helping with that. I really appreciate it. So again, the commemorative sign for Ms. Doris Bruce Kelly will be next Wednesday, February 22nd at 12 p.m. at Tennessee Avenue and 46th Street.
Awesome, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's awesome. If you would, council, take a look at your future considerations. Bill, we did remove the duplicate item, I believe. Correct? There you are, hiding behind Ben there. So we were able to do that. Council, if you will look at future considerations and let me know if you have any questions. Again, we have no department reports and no committees. We do have an attorney-client meeting in the conference room. Any questions or comments or other business to come before this council before we adjourn to attorney-client? Seeing none, we are adjourned.